I was thinking today about how you are one of two people, Matt Damon being the other one, where when your movie came out, his was Good Will Hunting and yours was Garden State, where had immediate resentment.
Yeah.
Because in both cases, you wrote the movie, starred in the movie, and great movie.
Thank you.
I, as an aspiring filmmaker, in both instances, had the why not me?
Yeah, I understand.
And it's weird because then sometimes you go, and years later, I made a couple movies, I'm working on my next one, and you go like, yeah, it has nothing to do with me that you made that movie or that Matt Damon made that movie. It actually, if anything, it should be inspirational. Oh yeah, people can get movies made for a small budget.
I think that's very hard in the community we're in because it's so competitive and it's so hard. There's a quote I heard. It was accredited to me that it was Steven Spielberg. I have no idea if it is, but I always remembered it. And is in Hollywood, people want you to do well, but they don't want you to do that well.
That's great.
I remember going to see Titanic with my father, and I loved the movie. I thought it was very moving, and he did too. I think we both cried, and I hadn't done anything at that point. I was, I think, waiting tables or PAing, and we came out, and he goes, "That Leonardo DiCaprio, he's about your age, isn't he?"
That's great.
It hurt so bad.
Yeah, sure.
But I felt that in a funny way. I was waiting tables, but I felt that for Leonardo DiCaprio. Like, where's my Titanic?
Of course. There's something about, and of course I made the whole movie Don't Think Twice about resentments for people who have success.
I love that movie, by the way. I love all your work so much.
Thanks.
I just get it out of the way at the top. I'm a true mega fan. I love your shows. Your shows really speak to me. And I love that I don't know anyone else that does it in the way that you do it. There's plenty of people doing one-man shows, but there's just something about the way that you tell a story that I find so unique and special.
Thanks. Yeah, it's I don't know what to say.
You don't have to say. I'll just say that when I walked into your house, I was geeked to see the couch.
The couch from the new one.
Maybe it's not the couch, but in my mind, it was like, oh, that's the couch. It was like seeing a celebrity.
Oh, gosh. That's so funny. No, it's funny, though, because your movie came out, and it was almost like, did you ever have that where you saw a movie where you were like, oh, how come I didn't write that movie?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I see movies and I go, why aren't I writing? Really? I go, why do you suck? Why are you so lazy? Why aren't you producing more? Why aren't you more prolific? That's kind of my reaction now. Because I know I can make a movie.
Right.
I know I can get a good cast together.
Right.
For me, it's hard for me to write, and I procrastinate a lot, and something has to happen in me that I finally get my ass in the chair to write. And
here's a funny, like, a friend of mine recently was a script super on a movie, and they hadn't really worked on a set before, and they had the buzz of like, oh my god, working on a set, it's unbelievable. It makes you like, it's a high.
Yeah.
I was like, I know. I go, that's why bad movies are made. Because you get so high on making movies that you're like, when's the next one?
Yeah.
And then you speed out another movie, and then it's not as good as the other movie.
Well, I think that definitely happens when you're an actor with heat. That certainly happened to me. I got some heat on me, and I was just like, holy shit, people are hiring me? Mm-hmm. And then I just started saying yes, and they didn't all work, but you just can't believe that you get to do it again. As a filmmaker who's a writer-director, I find it quite hard to turn them out because they don't just come to me. I'm not prolific, or haven't found a way to be yet. They take years to sort of stew.
Yeah, it was interesting.
I was always so jealous of Woody Allen, scandal noted, as I should say. I did Pete Holmes' podcast. He's the one who said, if you need to say a name like Woody Allen, just say scandal noted.
Scandal noted is a great way to approach it.
Yeah, because we don't have to go down that road.
We don't have to talk about it.
Let's just say scandal noted.
Yeah, scandal noted.
But I was always so envious of how he would make a movie a year. I was like, wow. And back at a certain time, a lot of them were great. And
and if you look at at the movies for batting average, really good.
Right.
Right? Because it's like if you're in the Hall of Fame if you bat 320.
Right.
He's definitely batting 320.
Oh, more than that.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to, but I've yet to figure out a way to do that. So I do what I do. And so my long-winded way of answering your question is when I see something great that moves me, I get mad at myself and go, why aren't you writing? You have to write something.
That's really interesting. I was listening to you be interviewed on a film podcast that I like called What Went Wrong. And you were talking about Garden State and about how you were writing in your notebook for years.
Yeah.
Because people ask advice questions about process on here, and I always say that, which is write in a notebook.
It's a lot of what you have on your walls. I mean, this is the perfect example of it. I would just have like diploma on ceiling.
Yeah.
Because I went into a neurologist's office and there were so many diplomas on the wall. I was like, this dude gets one more. It's got to go on the ceiling.
God, that's so funny.
So little things like that would happen.
As a scene.
Yeah. And then, the idea of someone really poorly trying to pitch me their pyramid scheme. I was like, it's so funny. It's cringe. So that little thing that Natalie does where like make a weird noise that no one's ever done in this spot. And it's like that way you can always feel unique. I literally would do that my whole life. It's just a joke I had with myself.
Right.
I never told anyone the joke. I would just do it myself when I was feeling, it was a weird little ticky thing I would do to cheer myself up. Like no one has ever done this in this moment and made this weird noise. And so it was like the cards on your wall. That's what the movie was in pieces before it started to take a shape.
It's interesting you should say that because there's Phil Lord, who's a great screenwriter director.
Yeah.
He gave me notes on a really early draft of Don't Think Twice, and there was this moment where it was an overheard that I had written down on a park bench where someone had said something that struck me as really funny, but it was straight ripped from life. You know that kind of thing where you write down an overheard and you're like, where can I find a home for this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Phil Lord looked at the script and he goes, you see this line, like this triplet of dialogue? The whole script has to be that.
Wow.
And
that's cool.
And I was like, and I took that with me and I was like, oh man, it's like, that's what it is. And that's what I think Garden State is. That's what appeals to me about it is it just feels alive. Even similar in A Good Person, the scene, and spoiler, it happens 45 minutes in, so a quarter of the way through the movie, she goes to a bar. She's like struggling with a pill addiction.
Yeah.
She goes to a bar and there's this conversation with these people she went to high school with who are also at the bar in the morning, and then they end up, and it's like a tense conversation about high school and life and addiction and power, and it hurts my stomach. It's so real.
Thank you. That for me, that means so much to me. Thank you.
When I watched that scene, I'm like, were you at that? Like, did you live that?
Not only did I know, I just know that world. When I made A Good Person, I said to myself, I was writing the movie thinking about a dive bar, and I thought, well, I want to shoot at the places I know. Yeah. I know that gross dive bar in Jersey. Like, I want to shoot there.
Yeah.
When I wrote The Principal's Office, where Morgan Freeman goes to consult the principal, like, I want to shoot at my high school principal's office. The duck pond where he goes to sit. I was like, my mom used to take me there. I had a little remote control boat, which I thought was the coolest toy that the world had ever invented. So I brought all of these people to the real places.
Oh, wow. It does the same thing that I feel like I'm getting at with writing in your notebook, which is it feels like life, which I think is the goal of it, of like so many things in movies. It's artifice that you're patching together, but hopefully the artifice is life bits.
I don't yet know how to write outside of my life. I would love to learn. I hope it's not too late to learn.
I don't think so.
Well, you're so good at that too. I write just like experiences from my life. I mean, Garden State was what I was going through in my 20s.
Yeah.
Wish I Was Here, which I wrote with my brother, was about a kind of a combination of things that were going on in our lives and our fear of our father dying and what that's like for young men. And then this movie was about grief, which I had experienced and going through COVID, and how you stand back up after such a painful fall.
when you direct Morgan Freeman, which you've done twice
now,
it's
yeah.
like at a certain point you just go, yeah, you just do whatever you want.
You know, it's a funny question. I'm also directing Harrison Ford now on Shrinking,
yeah.
and these guys, it's so interesting. They really want a leader.
Right.
Everyone thinks like,
Right.
Are you so intimidated? Of course you're intimidated. But then once you get over your own shit, these fellas, in my experience, I directed Michael Caine too, like some of these, the late Alan Arkin, they want like anybody, they don't want you to not have like any actor, they want you to have a vision and know what you're doing.
Right. There needs to be a coach.
There needs to be a coach.
On the World Cup soccer team, there is a coach.
Morgan Freeman, exactly. Morgan Freeman and Harrison Ford just don't suffer fools. So if you have a plan and you know what you're doing, and you're normal around them, I mean, I'm faking being normal around them, but I'm a decent actor. I get along really well with both of them because they don't want someone who's scared.
Right.
They don't want that. They don't want someone who's like, well, what would you do? They don't want that. They want a plan. They want you to act normal. And then on top of that, in both cases, both men really enjoy acting. They love it. So once you're into it and you're an actor, also I do think it helps that I'm an actor because even though I'm nowhere near in their stratosphere, we can talk acting in a different way.
100%.
And they love acting. Those men love acting. So we can talk about it from an acting point of view, not just a directing point of view.
That's what, there's like a viral clip of Ethan Hawke talking about this in an interview. He goes, you don't see a lot of cinematographers who become directors. You see a lot of actors become directors because it's essentially the same thing.
And in addition to knowing how to talk about acting, it's also like how to navigate a set so that it's going to be the best environment for a performance to come out of it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's all it is, right?
That's all it is.
Right.
So I heard someone say, like, you know, if you look at like the greatest scenes in cinema history, you know, like Brando in the back of the car saying I could have been a contender. It was a Tuesday, you know?
Yes. Yes.
It was a Tuesday after lunch. You know, they were like, all right, we're going to do the back of the car. Could have been a contender scene, everybody.
That's right. Or Desika with
Can everybody walk away, please? We're going to rehearse contender, back of the, you know.
That's exactly right. All these iconic scenes, here's looking at you, kid, was just a day on Casablanca.
Right. So how do you have the best odds in a short amount of time of creating an environment? And I think actors who've been on lots of sets know this. Like, I'm not going to do well if the set has this vibe. I'm not going to do well if you put this scene at the end of the day. I'm not going to do well if everyone's in my eye line and you're trying to. So I know how to create an environment well, perhaps on set where people are going to flourish.
What's the trick?
At its most basic, I think of it like throwing a wedding. I don't want the guests to know about all the craziness behind the scenes. And a movie is shooting a wedding. Let's say I have 26 days. I'm doing 26 different weddings in 26 days in 26 different locations.
Oh my gosh.
And that's the logistics. Now, in all those logistics, there's going to be so many problems. There's a problem every hour.
Yes.
But the actors don't know about any of that. They're the guests at the wedding. Everybody else is behind those folded screens.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's the most basic way I summarize it is I create an environment where they are so comfortable, the performers are so comfortable as they can be so that they feel safe to be present and do their best work. Because if they know that the catering truck's on fire or if they know we can't find one of the camera bodies, they could feel stressed in some way that is so unnecessary for them to feel stressed.
Right, because ultimately acting is so much about relaxation.
Exactly.
And if you're giving them cause to feel tense, then you're not doing anyone ever any favors.
Exactly. So how do I create the coolest, most fun, relaxed, chill environment where no one's in your eye line, who doesn't need to be, no one's raising their voice, who doesn't need to be. They don't need to worry about that we're running out of time. Like I just create a really comfortable environment, and in that space, you can get really cool, magical things because the people are present. You know, if you look at Morgan's performance, both Morgan and Florence have these AA monologues in A Good Person that are pretty extraordinary, I think, as someone who likes the craft of acting.
Florence is so good in that movie. It was one of those ones where you just go like, oh, that's that person. You lose, you forget the celebrity of the person.
She's just next level, man. I don't know what to say other than she's one of, as people who love the craft of acting, she's one of those people that you're like, whoa. I mean, I don't follow basketball, but I imagine how people are when they see Steph Curry.
Yeah.
I did see him hit 3 threes in a row at the Olympics. It's like, that's how I feel about Florence as a performer. It's like people who love, I have famous, we dated for a while, and huge famous celebrities would come up to me like, what's she like?
That's so funny.
because they're just in awe of how special her talent is.
Yeah. It's interesting. We're talking about like this idea of like a film needs a leader the way like a team needs a coach and all that kind of stuff. It's like, how did you do it on your first movie? Because it's like when I directed Sleepwalk with Me, I faked it for the most part, but then I think a few people who were veterans kind of seized on my lack of leadership at points. And I learned that lesson for the second one to come in with a lot more leadership and vision.
It's funny. I didn't know what I didn't know, which was one of the best things. That I was so naive. I mean, I'd gone to film school. I had PA'd on lots of sets. So I had some knowledge. I made a really cool short film that I was proud of in school that was 25 minutes long. So I felt like I knew what I was doing, and I knew the script really well. It was my story. Also, I always say, people always ask me, what's it like to direct yourself, and you can relate to this, I'm sure. Although it's incredibly stressful, and we can talk about that. One thing that's removed is the hardest thing in filmmaking is that the lead actor and the director are on the same page.
Yeah. Because
there's so much time can be lost in bad communication, or in not getting it, or in cringing and going, we got to move on. I think we got it. But I always knew that I was on the same page with myself. I knew that I got what I wanted for that character from me. I did the best I could, and we got to move on. And so there was relief in that, at least.
When you direct like Ted Lasso or Shrinking or these other things, do you have to change your directorial voice to fit into what their show is?
That's a great question. You have to fit into the lexicon of the show.
Yeah.
So you have to be... Now, the great thing with Lasso was I was directing the second episode of the whole series. And the pilot had such heavy lifting to set up the premise. Because it was hard. It was complicated to get what the hell's going on. And, And so the pilot had a heavy lift, and I was so blessed to get episode 2, which was the one about the biscuits that was going to show the audience, oh, also this show is going to break your heart.
Oh, interesting.
And so I felt like with that one, I was helping Jason and Bill and the team find the tone of the show. I got to really participate in what the look and tone was going to be. With Shrinking, I came in on episode 8. It's season 1. You're still doing that, but you gotta go, okay, this show doesn't do big ass crane moves. This show is very static. There isn't a dolly push at this moment. You have to really sort of study what the rules of the world are.
Yeah.
The tone. I mean, tone is so crucial, right? So, if you look at the tone of Lasso and Shrinking, they're both Bill Lawrence shows, but they're both they're both comedies, but they're different in tone.
Yeah. What's so funny? When you came to the new one on Broadway, you were like, if you had a prompter, I would do this show. You're like, I would do this show for a week.
Oh, your show?
Yeah, you would play me for a week on Broadway.
Yeah, I was making a joke, but I was kind of serious. I when I saw the new one, I was so blown away by you. Did I come to like a preview?
Yeah. I was walking around with a binder. That's right. Because I was still working on the show.
I know, but I find that crazy that you were still working on it, working it out. And I just loved it. And I thought I had such admiration for the idea of it. But I would love to do that. I hope if I ever have the balls to that you'd give me some Mr. Miyagi-ing. But the idea of doing telling a story, which I love telling stories.
Yeah.
That's what it was for me that was so special about your work, is you're such a good storyteller and they're so personal. I just didn't know anyone who's doing it like that. I mean, I loved, for example, well, I won't even mention names. There's so many that are great, but then they don't break your heart. And I'm such a fan of like, make me laugh and then break my heart.
What do you
So much of my work is inspired by that concept. Make me laugh and then please break my heart. Because if you don't, then I'm let down.
For sure. No, I think that's absolutely true. What do you think is the event in your life, real life, that could be a main event of a solo show?
I've been thinking about this. In fact, I've been thinking about it more because I was coming to see you, and I think I did this trip through Europe with my first love in college, and so many. It was my first experience being in love, and we had a lot of crazy experiences, including her ex-boyfriend sort of following us around Europe.
Wow.
And a lot of insane things happened, but a lot of really beautiful, heartbreaking things happened. And then it was sort of 3 chapters to it, because there was this experience in Europe, and then years later, we're kind of working it out.
Oh, I know. We are working it out.
I didn't realize that. It's happening.
We fell into it.
I didn't mean to. But then I was thinking that years later, I was then... So that's college. We're talking 95-ish.
Yeah. Then
years later, I'm now quote unquote famous, and I'm being photographed for GQ magazine in suits in Amsterdam, and I'm going through a breakup, and I'm very, very depressed, and I'm eating Xanax like they're Altoids. It's just so I can make it through the day to do a photo shoot for GQ magazine.
Wow.
On boats going through the canals of Amsterdam, and I run into the first love of my life's parents, who are there because they've moved there. And so I have a whole night with them.
Right.
Which is a kind of chapter 2.
Yeah.
In that chapter of my life. And then there's a 3rd chapter that I won't get into yet because I don't understand it, and it'll be spoilers. But I that's sort of the beginnings. I would love to talk about my discovery of heartbreak in those formative years.
Yeah, there's something so evocative about that. And it's hard to not, when you're describing it, it's hard to not see it as a film, because the scenery of it is so stunning.
I know. I think it could be a pretty film, but also could maybe have its genesis in a one-man show.
Yeah, and also you could work out some of the joke beats.
Yeah,
which is fun.
Yeah, it feels like something that could start as a
monologue.
As a monologue.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think like
some of the stories are so. An audience would enjoy some of the insane things that happened on this European trip so much. Sure. I can see where the laughs are. I'll tell you one anecdote from it. This boyfriend was following us all through Europe, and he would just show up in the cities we were in. And we were backpacking the whole thing, taking trains, and it was Christmas Day in Rome, and she said, "I'd like to go to this service across town in Rome for Christmas. It's the crack of dawn. Do you want to go?" And I thought about it, and I really didn't. It was so early. And she's like, "It's okay. It's fine if you don't want to go. Would you mind if I went with so-and-so?"
My ex.
Yeah. He's in town, and he's also Christian, like I am. And she goes, "If it's weird, it's fine. It's just a service, and then you and I will meet up, and we'll spend the day together." And I didn't want to be too jealous. I mean, the whole thing was insane. As I look back and now at my age, I go, "What the hell was going on?" Like, I still don't know what was going on. But anyway, I said, "Fine, go do it." They went, and then when we didn't have cell phones at the time. It was 95. In Rome on Christmas Day, at a certain point, the whole public transportation system shuts down. So we never were able to meet up. And I spent the day wandering Rome alone, and they spent the day wandering.
God, oh my God. That's a great story.
That's a good piece of something, right?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So a slow round question we ask is, what's a song that makes you cry? But for you, it'd have to be, what's a song that changed your life?
I mean, gosh, that's such a hard question. My brain instantly just said it's Cat Stevens something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Peace Train?
Wild World.
Yeah.
That's just songs I grew up with. Like, I grew up with like listening to, whereas other kids were listening to pop, I was more listening to singer-songwriter James Taylor, Cat Stevens,
Same.
Billy Joel, that stuff.
That was my first concert, Billy Joel.
Really?
Stormfront.
I love Billy Joel.
Oh, yeah. What was your first concert?
You know, it was Rush at MSG, and I left early because I was so drunk.
What?
The most Jersey sentence I've ever... I'm about to say the most New Jersey thing I've ever said. I took the New Jersey Transit into MSG with friends. We got 40 ounces illegally at a bodega with the brown paper bags, and we pounded them like it was ice water.
Oh, my God.
And then I went into MSG, and I remember I was already spinning, and they hadn't even started yet, and I was like spinning. And I just stood up, and I walked to Penn Station, and took the train home. I didn't talk to anyone.
I feel like...
And I literally, I think I saw like 3 Rush songs, and there was no cell phones. Obviously, my friends thought I died. They had no idea what happened to me. I got up.
My friends thought I died.
I said to myself at a very young age, I must have been 16, I am too drunk to be in public. I think the wise thing to do would be for me to walk home alone.
Wow.
And go home to New Jersey. And I just took the train home to New Jersey. I remember walking in, my parents were like, "You're home early." I was like, "Yeah, just tired." And then that was my first concert.
Okay. What are people's favorite and least favorite thing about you?
I think their favorite thing is that I'm very loving. I'm a very good friend. I'm very loving. I'm very affectionate. I'm very supportive. I'm very generous. I'm like a great friend. I really am. If we're close, like I'm a really, really good friend.
You're a mensch.
Yeah, I show up for people. I'll be there for you.
Yeah.
If you're in my friend group and I love you and we love each other, like I'll do anything for you. I'm very present and loving. What do they not like about me? I think I can also, and it's going to sound opposite of that, but I can also, when I get down and depressed, disappear. When I get a little melancholic, which happens sometimes, I also shutter up and kind of disappear.
And the interrelationship of that is hard. I can only imagine.
Yeah, because there's, when you're in it and you're sort of battling a sad time, it's hard to be present and be there for everybody.
Do you remember a feeling of pure joy?
Yeah, watching a Garden State premiere at the Sundance Film Festival in the back of Eccles Theater, which is the big theater there.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe it.
I can only imagine.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it was happening. And I just started weeping from joy. I think I've cried tears of joy only a few times in my life. And that was one of them. Like, I cannot believe this just happened.
Wow. Yeah.
Who else? Another one was my first real kiss. I had such a crush on this girl. I think it was maybe 8th grade, and I walked her home, and I was so enamored with her, and I'd never had like a open mouth tongue kiss like a real one, and it was like cold, and her nose was cold, and I think like she stood on her tiptoes and we kissed, and it was just, I remember walking home being like, how could life be any better than it is right now?
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, I think you've won the slow round. No one's ever won it.
You've had some fancy people on here. I'm sure they've won it.
There's some fancy people, but they didn't win it.
Do I get to ask you any questions?
You can if you want.
What do you do when you aren't getting, when you feel like you're not being productive enough? You feel like you're being lazy, or you're fucking off to do fun things instead of putting in the work?
Particularly early in my career, I had this where I thought, because I feel like we're raised in this universe where we're like, I need to make the thing, but I really need to market myself.
Yes.
Because if I could just market myself, people will purchase who I am, and then I will be done. I'll be good to go, kind of thing. I'll be discovered, so to speak.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I realized you got to discover yourself. And then you got to just keep creating. And that the creation is the thing that people are drawn to. If you create something that's great, people are really drawn to that thing.
That's so well said. No one cares about you waving your arms.
No.
They don't.
No.
And especially because you know you can do it, because you've done it successfully before, and people want more. You know what I mean?
But I think I fall into that trap over and over again, just to a lesser extent with age. But like in my 20s, I was definitely like, I got to get out there so people can find me. And it's like, no, there is no find you. You just have to create, because that's the thing that people need.
Yeah. It's funny. One can get so caught up in I have to do this, as you're saying, wave my arms but really what you need to be doing is creating more work.
Yeah, I think that's it. And just getting better. I mean, I think that's the big thing.
Yeah. Like, do you think you get better every time?
I'd like to think so. I think I get more. It was actually one of my questions for you, is like, when you're handing a script to someone for feedback, what's the feedback that's helpful to you?
Alexander Payne gave me great advice. He read my script and sent me a quote that I don't have memorized, but it was basically saying, be more restrained in places where you're the audience is going to be so with you.
Right.
You can be more restrained than you're writing, which is something and
of course he does so well.
That's why I wanted him. That's why I wanted his notes, because I think he's a master.
Holdovers is a perfect example of that. His movie last year. It's just like so restrained.
Yeah, my problem, to be honest, is as an audience member, I don't always want you to be restrained. I grew up on like musical theater, like,
right.
You know, I saw Les Miserables in like the 80s, and I was like, that was like a formative piece of art for me, which is like the least restrained thing in the world.
Sure.
So
it's opera, basically.
It's opera.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so I've fought in my writing, trying to be restrained, and with the help of people's notes, and of course a great editor, I do pull it back. But people who critique me still will say that I'm pushing it and maudlin and wearing my heart on my sleeve in a bad way. And I understand the criticism, but I also feel like, gosh, that's kind of who I am. Maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to. I need Alexander Payne to like do an editorial pass of my work so he can pull it all back. But but also sometimes I fight that and go, but that's not being me. And the audience who does love what I do likes it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. That's just something I just battle in my own head.
When I ask for feedback, a lot of times I'm just asking where people were confused in the script or the show. Like, were you ever confused at what was going on?
A one-man show like yours is hard to give notes on. I think I gave you a thought.
Yeah.
I think you totally ignored it. But I
ignored it. Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Passionately.
Yeah. No, it was like, it was my note was something like, I loved this, do it more.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the sound effects thing. There's that moment the moment where the bell rings.
Yeah, that's right.
I loved it.
Oh.
And you were probably, again, this is an example of restraint. This is a perfect articulation of it. I was like, that moved me. Give me more.
Right.
Find more little moments of that gentle sound effect. Whereas you brilliantly went the pain route and said, what if I gave it to you once?
Well, that's Seth Barrish, very much being subtle and calibrating. Like,
but see,
we tried it more.
But
we tried more.
My mistake would be like, ooh, that gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it 3 times in the show now. Mm-hmm. That's something I battle.
Yeah, I get that. I know what you mean. I mean, I think we all battle it.
Do you ask the audience as a whole for feedback ever? Not 1,000 people, but do you...
I read the laughter, and if there's laughter, I feel like I'm in a good place. If there's gasps, I feel like I'm in a good place. You know, there's a line currently in the show that gets a gasp, which is I was having an argument with my dad, and it was really, really tense, and it was in my 20s, and at the end of it, he goes, "You've really gone another way." And it was hard for me. It was really, really painful. And I'm driving away and it's hitting me. My whole life, I sort of wanted to be my dad. And at a certain point, I realized I wanted him to be me.
Oh, I love that.
And the audience, like when I did it the first time, like gasps.
Yeah, they hold their chests.
Because there's something in it. And when I hear that, I'm like, okay, that stays in.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's... To get a gasp at a comedy show, you go, okay, there's something here.
Yeah.
I wrote this down today, but I thought it was funny. I was walking down the street. This woman was talking to her daughter, and she has her phone out, and she prompts the phone to play a song. She goes, "Spider song," and then it's like the phone starts playing like some dance song about spiders, and then she goes, "Itsy bitsy spider song," and then it's not even the one. It's another itsy bitsy spider, and then she goes, "Itsy bitsy spider walked up the water spout. Out came the rain and washed the spider out." I go, "Just sing the fucking song. That's your child."
That's funny.
It's funny. I wrote that up today.
That's funny.
It's itsy bitsy spider.
I like that.
It's fun, right? And then the other one today was I was asked to do a Harris political fundraiser, and I wrote back, "Sure," and they wrote back, "We're gonna do a background check to make sure you're not a foreign agent," and I wrote back, "Uh-oh," which is not true, but the first part's true. The foreign agent part's true.
It's funny that they're going to do a background check to make sure. Well, they're probably going to do a lot of checks on you to see if you've got any.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I met Obama a couple times, and I think that they do recon on you.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I had the same thing.
I mean,
you know, it was really funny.
There's nothing you can't help, even if you've led a crime-free life, to go, is there anything they're going to find? Like, what are they going to dig up on me? That, you know, like, no.
I met Obama at an event, and I was working on the movie Trainwreck, and at the time. And Judd Apatow goes, "Oh, you're meeting Obama?" He goes, "Turn your audio recorder on your phone and record the whole thing." I go, "Are you out of your fucking mind?"
Wow.
Like, can you imagine if you were recording?
If you got caught.
And then the Secret Service goes, "Step over here," and then they go, "Can we see your phone? It's fucking recording."
So
That's
embarrassing.
So crazy.
So embarrassing. So you did it.
No, so I have it right here. We're gonna play it. We're gonna end with a thing we do called "Working It Out for a Cause."
I could talk to you forever.
I'll talk all day.
You're very interesting, and I'm glad you had me.
Thank you so much for coming. We do a thing called "Working It Out for a Cause." If you have a nonprofit that you think does a nice job,
the Midnight Mission is a charity in downtown Los Angeles that helps people that don't have a house and are very often on drugs, and will give anyone a bed and give anyone food and water and a place to sleep.
Well, that's great. We will contribute to the Midnight Mission. We will link to them in the show notes and encourage listeners to contribute as well. I love talking to you. I can't wait to see where that project goes.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna
hit me up.
I'm gonna reach out to you.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.